What's up, everyone? My name is ZayNews, and this is the ZayNews Podcast, where we talk about all things basketball, whether it's the NBA, college hoops, youth basketball, you name it. If it's about hoops, then we talk about it. But as you know, we are in the midst of the NBA playoffs, so we got to talk about that. And I'm going to do things a little bit different today. This is going to be more of a quick hitter where we talk about everything that's happened since the start of the NBA playoffs. That was the last time I did a podcast episode. I'm going to try and do episodes a little bit more frequently throughout the playoffs, giving updates, giving my opinions after games, because so much is going on and because one game can really sway and impact a team season, right? So we want to make sure that we're getting real-time feedback and information to you guys, and also just giving my take on things that are happening and who I think is exposing themselves, and also who I think is illuminating where they could potentially be towards the end of the season as we get closer to that finals round. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into it, guys. I really just want to go over what I've seen from each series so far this playoff in the first round, and give you guys my takes. So I'll try to keep this one a little bit quicker than normal, but let's get started. So I'm going to get the obvious ones out of the way first, and that is OKC versus Memphis. Now, when I first was looking at who OKC could match up with in the first round, I did think Dallas would have been a better series. One, I think they are in a better place between their coaching staff, front office, the team as a whole, right, from top to bottom, was just in a better place, even though Dallas has faced a lot of injuries. And I also thought Dallas had a more unique roster configuration that would have presented more challenges to OKC. Now, with that being said, did I think Dallas or Memphis could impose enough of their will and challenge them enough to make it an actual series, right, where I thought it may go seven, or it could be a swing series? No. But I did think both Dallas and Memphis, more so Dallas, could potentially take a game or two off OKC. What I have saw over the past two games is the reason why I would have preferred to watch Dallas in the series, because even if Dallas would have struggled at times and more than likely gotten beat, I think they just presented more matchup problems, right? Anytime you got, AD across from you, it's going to be tough with just how dynamic he is, everything he brings to the table from an offensive and defense of perspective. Plus, they got two bigs coming off the bench. They can really go big on you. And they also had some pretty good guards, though Kyrie was hurt. I liked what they brought to the table. And it seemed like they were just competing hard towards the end of the season, trying to prove a point. Memphis, on the other hand, as with the way their season has went over the past 2.5 months, have just been very inconsistent. And they haven't played well against good teams, to be quite honest with you. So I didn't have as much faith in them. But I will say it's extremely disappointing to see the way that they've lost these two games. I do think, you're a playing team, you're kind of set up for disaster, especially if you lose that first game in the play-in tournament and have to play on Friday, and then go in, only have a day between Friday and starting your playoff series. You're already at a disadvantage. But with that being said, Memphis has not shown me anything. And it's sad because Memphis on paper is very similar to OKC. Young, talented teams with future slash current stars of the league, who should feel, right? Memphis should feel like they should be or could be where OKC is, and having similar to success to what OKC is. And the fact that they're not, I would think, and for me personally, it would really bother me internally. You know what I'm saying? As a competitor, it would really fire me up that OKC's seen as like this amazing team, and deservingly so, right? They've won 68 games this past season. That's, in a historical win percentage. But the fact that we've already essentially hit our peak, right? From what it seems like, right? They had a playoff series win like 2 years back, and since then they've really just gotten worse. You know what I'm saying? So far as to they fire their coach towards the end of the season. Ja's been in and out of lineups with injuries, with issues with the NBA. Jaren Jackson, it feels like, has gotten better as an offensive presence. Desmond Bane has been consistent. He's been who he is. But their team, what they bring to the table, has just seemed to really regress in the past couple of years. For a team that's young and a team that should still be on an upward trajectory. So it's really sad to see that from that perspective. Hopefully they can turn things around. I think there were some non-basketball things that got in the way of their team building to what it could have potentially been. But, you fire your coach. I'm not sure what this offseason will look like. Um, do they go a new route? Do they try and trade Ja? I feel like Ja is perfect for that city and that culture, but who knows? They're kind of in no man's land right now. I don't know what they do. I think someone was saying Jaren Jackson is due to get a max extension this summer. For a small market team like Memphis, you know, I know they got to be selective on where they spend their money, but like, are you going to get somebody? Jaren Jackson's kind of irreplaceable for a franchise like that. Even though I don't consider him a top 20 player in the NBA, you kind of have to pay him. So, and I don't think that'd be the worst thing in the world either. I don't think if you can get a good coach, if you can get some good additional pieces, which they have good pieces too, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to keep that core together. I think they could be competitive. They just have to make some major changes. And I say all that to say, got a little long-winded on that. OKC in 4, sweet, get them out of here, and hopefully they come back and have something new to offer next season. But the Memphis I've seen over the past 2 games is not one that I have high hopes for. Going over to the East, the 1-8 over there, Cleveland versus the Heat. Just for the sake of who the Heat have been over the past 6 to 7 seasons, I have more faith in them. They are going up against a very dynamic team, a team that has been ultra consistent, very good defensively, very good offensively all season, to the point they've won 64 games, right? I think just giving Eric Spoelstra, that coaching staff, and the culture that they've created in Miami some credit. I think they take one off Cleveland. But I don't know if they can score enough points to consistently beat Cleveland. So even though I think they will make sure that they're prepared, they have a solid game plan in place, seeing them win more than one is just not likely to me. So Cleveland in 5, deservingly so. They've had an awesome season. Going back down, we'll stay in the East over here to the 4 versus 5. Pacers versus Milwaukee. I love Giannis. I got to be honest with you guys. I love Giannis. I love Damian Lillard. Those are 2 of my favorite players over the past, like 10 or so years. I got to see Damian Lillard when he was a rookie in the Summer League in Las Vegas. I've gotten to see him play in Portland a couple times. Haven't gotten to see Giannis play live, but I just love the intensity he brings to the game and the way he always gets better every season and just as relentless in his approach, to be honest with you. But the team that they have around them, the supporting cast, is just not great. The defensive schemes, their ability to lock in on defense and consistently defend at a high level is extremely low. My goodness, watching that game yesterday was so annoying. So they go on this fantastic run in the fourth quarter. They get the game to a 2-point game, and then they literally give up 2 wide open threes. And the first one was egregious. You know what I'm saying? Pascal Siakam got to stand there for like 5 seconds on the right wing, set his feet, shimmy a little bit, get his shoulders comfortable, make sure that, he was comfortable, and then fired that 3. And it was just nail in the coffin. You know what I'm saying? After you make some tremendous run away, on their home court, potential to beat them, Milwaukee's like continuity is just terrible, and they are extremely frustrating to watch. You see Giannis doing his thing. Dame was out for a month. You don't expect him to come back and be the Dame that we traditionally see, and that's okay. Hopefully he can get into some sort of rhythm before the series is over. I think it's going to be tough for him to do that, and tough for him to, have the conditioning to really push and press like I'm sure he wants to, especially on the offensive end of the ball. So I don't know. And I to be honest with you, I think the Pacers are kind of front runners, man. Yeah, to be honest with you, I think the Pacers are front runners. I don't love that team that much as just a fan. I think they got some great players. I really like Pascal Siakam. I really like some of the guys they got coming off the bench, all that sort of stuff. But I just think when your best player comes across as kind of a front runner, and even though I like Tyrese Halliburton, it's just I don't know. They just rub me the wrong way sometimes, but more than likely they are gonna get the Bucks out of here in like 5 games, maybe 6. But um, the Pacers aren't great at not on their home floor, so that's a little nugget. Maybe Milwaukee could tie it up 2-2. Giannis is so great, and Dame, if he gets back into his rhythm, he's so great that I wouldn't put it outside the realm of possibilities that they could tie it up 2-2, make it an interesting series. But they just don't defend consistently enough, and honestly, their offense isn't consistent at all. What I'm saying? Like they just rely heavily on Giannis's talent, and I think that's it. Kyle Kuzma, I think, had made the wrong decision going to the Wizards over the past season or two. I know he had some good numbers his first 2 seasons for the Wizards. To me, it seems like he's regressed quite a bit as a basketball player, and he isn't great. And he's not the player who helped the Lakers win a championship in 2020. That's for sure. Um, I don't know if he's just been in a losing culture for so long he's forgotten what that's like or what. But even though he had 12 points and had some nice transition drives, like you're not good enough right now. And trading for him and giving up Chris Middleton. I know Chris has been injured. He's older, right? You get a younger guy who has had similar levels of production. But one thing I will say about Chris, if he's on that court, he is going to be productive and he's going to make winning plays. And if Chris Middleton was healthy right now on the Milwaukee Bucks, they'd be in a much better place than they are right now. I'm sure of that. So I don't know. But it's frustrating because I like Milwaukee. I want to see them be successful. I want to see them in like Eastern Conference Finals every year competing because that's what Giannis's trajectory should be with how great of a player he is, right? He's an all-timer. But I mean, I get it. It's tough when you're a small market team. They really tried to go hit a home run with the Damian Lillard trade. That trade hasn't been as successful as we had hoped. Not in large part because of Dame and Giannis. I think that they've produced and they've been consistent, but just what they've been able to surround guys with. I think they're going to have to make some serious considerations in the offseason. And to be honest with you, I said this a few weeks ago. People called me crazy. If Giannis gets bounced in the first round, what's preventing him from asking for a trade? Because what is Milwaukee going to do to put a team around him that actually can compete for a championship? They don't have many assets. They don't have much money that they can spend. It's going to be tough, right? And if I'm seeing that as Giannis, do I really want to waste the rest of my prime being a first round exit? Because the East is only getting better. You got teams like Detroit coming through the funnel. I know Miami's probably going to find a way to retool and reload. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not getting any easier. And that team is not getting any better. So they got to figure something out, right? You can't just rely on. No team has ever been great just with one or two guys. You know what I'm saying? You need a well balanced roster. And they just don't have that. And can I say one more thing? Why isn't Pat Connaughton playing at all? You know what I'm saying? He, at the very least, though he is not their most talented player on that roster, he makes winning plays. He rebounds the ball. He's athletic. He's like 6'4", 6'5". He will knock down big shots. He just had like 40 before the end of the season, so he was in a good shooting rhythm. He hasn't touched the court this whole playoff series. He's a guy who's played meaningful minutes the past like 5 seasons for Milwaukee. And he's getting like, uh, DNPs. Put him in the game. You got all these guys playing. Gary Temple, though I think he is a fine player, I think he's a good player, is a good three-point shooter. He played 30 minutes and had 3 points last night. Pat Connaughton would have been more productive than that. I'm not saying he would have had 15 or 20, but he would have gotten on loose balls. He would have dove on the floor. He would have been effective defensively. Put that man in the game. This team is deprived of winners and guys who know how to win. Put the winners you have on your roster in the game. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing over there, but it's frustrating to watch. We'll move on. Knicks versus Pistons. I think everybody saw this. I know Knicks fans probably aren't happy about it, but this is going to be a series, right? The Detroit Pistons very well may have the most talented player on their roster. You know what I'm saying? As much as I love Jalen Brunson, I think he has been great more consistently and longer than Cade Cunningham has. But Cade Cunningham is capable of being the best player on the court any of the games this series. You know what I'm saying? And they have a really good, I will say really good, but they've done a great job of building a roster around him that can compete. So with that being said, I think this series goes deep. I think the series goes at least 6 games. I still am picking the Knicks to win this series, but this is one of those series. This is one of the best series of the first round. I got this series. Obviously, the Nuggets and Clippers. I think that's the best series in round one. And then these guys and there's four. So the Nuggets, Clippers, Knicks, Pistons. I think is going to be a great series. Rockets, Warriors. I think is going to be a great series. Even if that series ended up only going 5 games, I think each of those games are going to be razor close and a dogfight each night. You know what I'm saying? And then lastly, the Lakers and Minnesota. All those series are going to be competitive first round series. So and if Jalen Brunson is hobbled, who knows? You know what I'm saying? He's had those ankle injuries. Who's to say? That doesn't impede on their potential chances of winning that series, because it really could. Going into it with that kind of ankle sprain. So we shall see. But that's a fun series. I think it's going to go at least 6 games. Boston Mavericks, or excuse me, Magic. Boston Celtics versus the Orlando Magic. I think Orlando is very talented. I think they are on their way to being a great team. I think there's some changes they have to make. I think offensively they have to figure some things out. And I think a lot of that just has to do with Wagner and Paulo just maturing and becoming, more uh, more high IQ guys, right? I think once they do that, once they figure out, how to be more efficient and just maximize their teams and themselves, I think the sky's the limit for Orlando, and I think they can really be competitive in the East for a long time if they keep that core group of guys together. But they just don't score enough, right? And when you're playing a team in Boston who can shoot the heck out of the ball, who's deep, who defends well, um, you're just going to have a tough time being able to put up enough points on the board to consistently compete with them and potentially beat them. So um, if Jason Tatum has to be out for a game, maybe it goes 5. I think that's a 4-game series as well, though. Or if the Celtics have one of their um, common but not so common cold shooting nights, that's another recipe where they could potentially get one in Orlando. But I think more than likely that one's going for 4 games. Moving on, going back up to the Nuggets and Clippers. Those first 2 games have been so fun to watch. Just high level basketball, guys making plays. Kawhi went off in game 2, played really, really well. And it's just great to see him playing at that level. I think everybody, or at least the general consensus on Kawhi, is like when he's out there, he's one of the best players to ever play the game when he's out there and healthy, right? And I'm not saying he's a top 5 player, top 10 player, but I legitimately mean this. I think healthy Kawhi, playoff Kawhi, like top 25 player ever. You know what I'm saying? Like his peak, what I'm saying, is like a top 25 guy ever. You know what I'm saying? When you're talking about the Dwayne Wades of the world, the Dirk Nowitzki's of the world, the Kevin Garnett's of the world, that range of player, even, I think Kevin Durant has solidified himself a little bit ahead of that. But like getting near that level, I think Kawhi Leonard at his peak is right in the mix with all those guys. You know what I'm saying? I think he's that special, he's that talented. And I said this last week. I think if Kawhi is playing at his best, he can have a equal impact on the game as Nikola Jokic can. You know what I'm saying? Because he's playing both sides of the ball. He's being extremely efficient in his offense, right? Even though he doesn't assist the ball the same way Joker does, he is making the most of his opportunities each and every time he touches the ball. He's going to make the right play. He's going to get to a spot. He's going to take a good shot. And there's very little, fluff about his game. It's very matter of fact. It's very to the point. It's very fundamental, and he's a special player. And that was a game without like really anybody else having a great performance behind him, right? James Harden at like 18, Vucevic, Zubac played pretty well, but like they didn't have any great standout performances beside that, and they were able to eke out that win. I think it's pretty clear and fair to say that the Clippers have the more talented roster at this point. I think they have better depth. I think they have more talent, probably even in their starting lineup outside of Joker. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like their chemistry even is in a really good place right now too. So I like the Clippers in that series. What's hard is Joker is just so special. So like, would you be surprised if, in their next game, Joker had 45, 15, and 10, and they won. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's tough, because he's very capable of doing that. But if Michael Porter Jr. is out, if he's injured and he can't produce at the level they need him to, that is, even though he didn't play great in game one, that's a big loss for them, right? Because they are not very deep. They need all hands on deck. They need everybody out there trying to give what they can to the team. So um, even though they can win without MPJ, right? He's a critical piece of their team, and he played great in game two, right? 15 and 15. Like, he didn't shoot the ball great, but he found ways to be effective, and that's a lot coming from a guy like him. So hopefully he can be healthy. You never want to see a team lose because of health. I don't think if they lose, it'll ultimately be because of health, but just want to see all guys on the court, so there's no excuses. But I got Clippers in seven. Clippers in seven. Fun series though, very fun series. Lakers Minnesota. Lakers bounced back last night. Had a good game too. Um, made the proper adjustments. Really, like everybody had said, they just came out with better intensity. They closed out well. It was really a all hands on deck effort defensively. It's so interesting with the Lakers, because when they first made the trade for Luka, right, there was like a 10-game span where their defense was awesome and it was like top in the league. And then from there, LeBron gets hurt, their defense goes in the toilet. And then since then, their defense has been very up and down. They've been able to win games, leading into the playoffs and stuff, but very inconsistent defensive efforts. And honestly, I think if the Lakers are able to sustain that level on the defensive end of the floor, right, it doesn't mean that, Minnesota won't shoot better, they won't have more role players, give more, right? They didn't have great performances by any of their role players yesterday, but if they're able to consistently defend at that level, that's the team that I thought could beat Minnesota in like a competitive 5 games. Because if they're defending at that level, most games are going to be close. They're going to be tight towards the end of the game. And that's where I think the Lakers shine, because they have 3 guys who can make plays at the end of the game, where most teams only have 1 or 2. Minnesota, for example, only has 1 if Julius Randle is playing well, 2. And if Mike Conley's hitting shots, um, he's always been a clutch player. I guess he can make big shots, but like, that's not something I think you can rely on. And you could say that about most teams when you just look at their roster. So with that being said, I always would favor the Lakers in close games, just because I think LeBron's going to make the right decision, Luka's going to make the right decision. They're going to find ways to make plays and make shots when they need to, more so than other teams. So if the Lakers can sustain that again, if they can come out, play hard, fight, I really like their chances. And to be honest with you, anybody who's saying that the refs were the reason the Lakers won, I think is uninformed. I think they called more fouls on the Lakers yesterday than they did on the Timberwolves, if I'm not mistaken. So the foul count was very even. Free throw shots were pretty even. It wasn't like some great discrepancy. It wasn't like the league made a call. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest with you, the Timberwolves foul a lot, right? They are overly aggressive. They're very handsy. Naz Reid, Julius Randle, those 2 guys in particular foul a lot. And then you got guards like Dante DiVincenzo, Nikhil, Alexander Walker. They like to be aggressive. And when I watch this series, it reminds me a little bit of last year's series when the Timberwolves played Denver. And what I feel about the Timberwolves, if I could be honest with you guys, is they're very good being the hammer. They're not very good being the nail. Meaning, when they are allowed to dictate the pace of the game and control the game with their defense, they're one of the best teams in the league. You know what I'm saying? They are very good and they are very hard to stop. When they are not allowed to play that aggressive style of defense that usually is very handsy and stuff like that, it affects the effort that the role players give. It affects their ability to be productive on offense, and their team just kind of falters on that, for lack of a better term, right? They just don't compete in the same way. And we saw that in Denver, right? They had games where they were kicking Denver's butt. They had games where they were getting their butts kicked. And you could see it almost game to game. There would be one game Denver had, the good gas tank. They were recovered. They could compete. They could play hard last season, and they would win those games, and they would win them pretty cleanly. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there were other games where it was like, no, we're pushing the pedal to the metal, and we are really gonna put our foot on their necks. And I'm talking about the Timberwolves, and all that starts with defense for them. But as soon as they got into the conference finals, the difference is you now have two elite ball handlers and shot makers who you can't be like, they're going to make you pay for being that physical and make you play for being that aggressive on defense. There's pros and cons to everything, right? Being very aggressive on defense looks great, but when you have guys skilled enough to beat that, it also leaves you very vulnerable, right? Because if you're overplaying me so much so that I can get by you in two steps, now it's all help side defense. You guys are recovering, and you can't catch up from that point. You know what I'm saying? And Luka was great at that. To be honest with you, Jaden McDaniels, um, he's an amazing defender. Luka's one guy that he just like is not meant to match up on. To be honest with you, I think their goal is just to kind of like keep him, like, say, Jaden, just do your best, keep him in front. But he's just too light in the ass. You know what I'm saying? He's just a little too light. Luka gets him down to his spots, give him a shoulder bump, hit a fadeaway, a floater. Luka's really good at getting by guys, and Jaden McDaniels is one of them. Honestly, I think the best person to defend Luka yesterday was Julius Randle. Even though he got blown by a few times, he seems to not bite on his fakes as much as anybody else. He's strong, so Luka can't get into his body as much. From what I've seen personally, Julius Randle is the best person on that team to guard Luka, just because he has the physical makeup. He's quick enough. And he seems to be pretty good at not biting on a lot of Luka's stop and goes and fakes and in and outs and crossovers and all that sort of stuff. He plays fairly disciplined defense. Eventually, Luka gets to a spot. Still, he scored on him 3 or 4 times, but it seemed like there wasn't as much ease in those buckets as there were with other guys for the most part. So that is one thing that I saw, but I don't think they'll change anything up too much. I think they'll probably keep Jaden McDaniels on him, because Julius Randle is also very inclined to, if you were to try and match him up on him, get 2 fouls in the first quarter and then throw his whole game out of whack. And if there's one bright spot that Minnesota can take away from last game, is that Julius Randle is playing good playoff basketball, and that's not something that could have always been said in his past. So I mean, if he can keep that up, who knows? But I still think the Lakers win. I'll give Minnesota one more game. I think they one, maybe two. Honestly, I still think the Lakers win the series. I like them in a game 7. I think they'll win it in probably 6. But regardless, I think the Lakers win the series. I like Minnesota. I don't know if we're going to get that level. They're going to get that level of production from Julius Randle consistently. He looked really good out there last night. He had some mistakes. He's always going to make some mistakes, but for the most part, I thought he looked pretty good. But I don't know. I think the Lakers, honestly, I just think the Lakers are a better team. They're more consistent offensively. I think they will be able to make the adjustments as they show themselves, and I think that'll allow them to get the job done over the course of this series. Again, I'd probably say 6 games, but got to give Minnesota some respect, man. A lot of this same roster, outside of not having Cat and subbing in Julius Randle, they made it to the conference finals last year. They beat Denver, who was coming off a championship, so they're nothing to be messed with. But ultimately, I think, right, the main thing with Minnesota, if I could just bring this point home, is that they're very good at being the hammer. They're not very good at being the nail. So with that being said, the Lakers have the ball handlers and the skill, primarily in Luka right now, to not allow that pressure to be as much of a factor. And when that pressure is not as much of a factor, they're not as good of a team, right? So if you can consistently match their physicality and not allow their pressure to beat you, then they're going to have a rough time, I think, because their role players aren't going to be as engaged. They're not getting steals, getting out in the open court. You know what I'm saying? They're not making all these big plays, these big showy plays. And that really seems to zap their energy, or just not allow their energy to ever surface. So if the Lakers can stay physical, I like Lakers' chances. I think There's definitely some things that we could do better. I think Austin Reeves has to find a way to get going. There's part of me that thinks that Austin may just struggle this entire series because the Timberwolves just have a lot of guys who can stay in front of them, and if they're allowing the series to be played as physical as it has been over the first two games, I think AR is going to have a tough game. Now that's not to say that he's not going to find ways to be successful and still score a little bit, but AR getting 25, 30 like he was a few games towards the end of the season, and throughout the season in total, I think may be tough. I think it's going to have to come a lot from Luka. I think LeBron's going to have to continue to find ways to make impacts on the game. It's not always going to be scoring. I think he has to score to a certain extent, but it's not always going to be scoring. And I think if AR can just get comfortable and hit open shots and create plays when they're available to him, then I think the Lakers will be all right. So I got the Lakers in 6 on that one. Lastly, Rockets versus Warriors, and they have game 2 tonight. But my biggest thing is, like, can the Rockets consistently score enough? And I don't know if they can. They definitely can score better than they did last game, and I think that'll make for a more I don't want to say a more competitive game 2 because I thought game 1 was really competitive, but maybe like closer, maybe higher scoring. There's pros and cons to everything, right? So with you picking the pace up, maybe scoring more, that leaves more opportunity for Golden State to score more as well. So I think it's going to be a little bit tit for tat. I just don't know if the Rockets can consistently score enough, and I would honestly bet against them being able to consistently score more than the Warriors. Both teams have good defenses, so in that regard, I think it's pretty even. Rockets may have a slightly better defense, but the Warriors definitely have a better offense. So with that said, I got the Warriors. The Rockets, man, they got a lot of pride. They play hard. 5 games, 6 games, I think something in there. I think the Warriors win in 5 or 6 games. Again, I think, these close playoff games with a lot of guys who don't have a ton of experience, even though the Rockets do have some guys with experience, are tough to win. You know what I'm saying? They're tough to win. And you're talking about a team in the Warriors who has the most experience. So unless the Rockets just come out, punch the Warriors in the mouth, and the Warriors don't respond, you know what I'm saying? I just don't know how they beat them. The Warriors, similar to the Lakers, I think are going to win down the stretch more times than they aren't. So I'd be less surprised if the Warriors beat the Rockets in 5 than I would be if the Lakers beat the Timberwolves in 5. So we'll see. Got the Golden State Warriors in, let's say, 5 or 6. I'm not sure, but one of those two. But it's been fun. The playoffs have been extremely competitive outside of a few series. I'm excited. This is a great time of year for us basketball fans. Hope you guys like the content. If you like the content, make sure to like, subscribe, share it. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm crazy. Tell me why you don't think I'm off. I had somebody tell me that they need to take my mic away when I said Giannis might get traded to would it be possible? I didn't say he would, but I had someone call me crazy when I said, is it possible Giannis gets traded to the Denver Nuggets in the offseason for not for Joker, but for their 3 other guys in Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, and MPJ, plus like 4 picks. And to me, if Milwaukee gets bounced in that first round, nothing's off the table. I could see Giannis in Miami. I could see him in. I don't know if he'd want to play with Joker, to be honest with you. I think he's a competitor in that way. He may want to have kind of his own team, but like I could see him in a Miami Heat jersey. Oh man, I could see him finding a way over to the Warriors. The Warriors are always very active in the trade market, especially for a guy like that. There's a lot of places I could see him, and I think he'd help any one of those teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if they get bounced in the first round. There's very dim lights on Milwaukee's future in terms of how they can get better. So keep an eye on that, guys. But again, if you like the content, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, and we'll be back with more NBA news. I'll probably get a video out before the end of the week, just checking back in on what's happened since today. Peace.